Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I am Kyle. Sean is with me. And Sean, I think we have some things to check in on. You were going to clean your room last week or something, right?
Yeah, kind of get it organized. It's done. I got it all situated. I rearranged a little bit, put up some things to help with audio for the podcast. So I'm golden. You were gonna.
And how is your mental stability? Your emotional stability?
Yeah, I'm feeling good.
Nice, good.
You had a bunch of miles to complete for the global challenge. How'd you do?
Yeah, I had to complete over 200 miles when we checked in last week, and I got it done. It was not easy because, it's just not very light outside early in the morning or late at night, and it's cold, but whatever.
Yeah.
I got it done. So it was great. The Global Challenge Zoom was on Saturday, and it was wonderful to share the accomplishment with the community.
Nice. Very good. You get a couple rides in the rain, didn't you?
Yeah. It was earlier in the Global Challenge. I had a ride almost all in the rain for 100 miles. It wasn't too cold, though, so not bad.
Good. Well, in our last episode, 124, I alluded to a social media story or a story involving social media that I wanted to kick off today's episode with and go from there. Last week, I had one of those run-ins that we've talked about before. Somebody sees me walking and they just assume I'm drunk.
Yep. That
story of our lives, right? Or at least mine at this rate. So, one morning, go to work. I stop at Starbucks, which is basically every day of the week right now. And getting my Starbucks, I walk out of the coffee shop and I'm heading to my car. As I'm walking across the driveway, a landscape truck pulls around the corner and they want to drive where I'm walking. So I kind of, get out of their way and continue walking to my car. And as I'm approaching my car, I'm hearing some yelling in the background, but it doesn't click. It doesn't register.
Right.
So I keep walking, and I hear another, holler. And at some point, I realize, I think somebody is talking to me, right? Somebody's yelling toward me. So I'm focused on my walking. It's very abnormal right now. I walk like a hot mess, and I've got to stay pretty well focused on my steps. So as I approach my car, I brace the door handle, and then I look back and I realize that somebody is yelling at me, and it's this landscape truck like 200 feet, maybe 400 feet away. It's like a whole aisle over. Right. So a little ways away.
Yeah.
And they're yelling, and the guy says something to the effect of, "Hey, are you drunk?"
Yikes.
And now it clicks, right? I heard the word drunk a few times, didn't realize it was me, and it's all coming together in this real quick second. And I realized the guy is concerned and he thinks I'm drunk.
Yeah.
So I literally just turn and yell, "No." And I shake my head. I've got a face covering on. And, and I'm, in that moment, I'm like, what? You're really far away.
Yeah.
And you're, it's weird to me. So I just keep it simple. And I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
And I get in my car. The guy yelled something after I said no. I have no idea what. He could have been like, "Oh, okay," or he could have been like, "Yeah, right." I have no idea.
Right.
But he continued to talk. I just got in my car. And in that moment, I realized, man, this guy, he's in his work truck and yelling at me from across the parking lot. Everything about it, I'm just not excited about. So I think, you know what? I'm just gonna take a picture of the work truck. So I get in my car. He's parked by now. I pull up right next to his truck, and I roll my passenger window down, and I hold my phone up, and I just take a picture. I wish I would have taken video, but I didn't. The guy, in this moment, he's getting out of his truck. He looks at me, sees that it's me, the guy that he thought was drunk, and he sort of quickly and, in my opinion, aggressively approaches the window of my car and says, "I know you're drunk, buddy."
Whoa.
Like, word for word, "I know you're drunk, buddy." Like, so obviously my no meant nothing to him. And now that I pulled up pretty close to him and snapped a photo, he's not in a good mood, it seems. And right that moment, of course, I realized it doesn't matter what I say or do. This guy is convinced I'm drunk. And because my window was down, because I'm alone, and he's got another guy in the truck, he's not alone, and he seems to be getting kind of aggressive, I just drive away. Go to the other side of the parking lot, which is where my work is, and I park, and now I'm really worked up, right? And my blood is boiling on the inside, and I'm like, okay, now I got a problem. Not only with the guy, but with the company he's representing in that moment. So I emailed the company and I left a voicemail at some random number that I found on Google search, and left a voicemail for the company asking them to give me a call back because there was a misunderstanding and I really felt like I had been, on a more miles accosted in a sense, right?
Right.
So I went on a phone call. So I'll pause the story there.
Yeah.
That's what has opened the dialogue up for today's conversation.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts. First of all, I can so relate with just the way you described walking across the parking lot.
Totally.
Because, I was there.
Sure.
10 years ago or whatever it was. I used to walk exactly like that. Obviously, I never broke my femur. But I was walking like that. And it is, like, literally dangerous to think about anything except walking and putting one foot in front of the other. And so I really related when you were saying that, you heard someone yelling, but you weren't going to turn around because you have to concentrate on just not falling over. So I totally relate to that situation. My other thought is, I don't understand why this guy thought it was his responsibility to save the world from Sean Baumstark, who looks like he was drunk. Like, this guy was so far away and literally having to yell out his window to make sure society is safe from this drunk guy. Like, what? Like, I don't know why he thought it was his responsibility.
Yeah, I probably have two thoughts on that. One, I get it, right? Maybe he's concerned for his own safety. He's a driver in the same area that I'm in, so maybe he's just in that moment thinking, well, this guy might run into me, right, and cause an accident. So I get that. But I also am convinced, given his energy or attitude, I'm convinced that he probably is a bit of a vigilante in his own mind, right? I think that was kind of a place he was coming from.
Right. So one more thought is, I wanted to define sort of the situation of, this guy as an individual versus this guy representing his company in that situation. Like, it comes to mind for FARA ambassadors. I am the leader of the ambassador program for FARA, and we talk about a lot that, especially on social media, it's easy to complain about our situation or, say certain things that whatever. And we always talk about, you're always representing FARA. And when that guy's in that truck, he's representing the company he works for, or if he's wearing that shirt, right? And so, I know you have some experience with that, and just like in your role of your company too, right? That's part of what you do is disseminate culture of your company and make sure everybody's representing the company correctly, right?
There's a major responsibility when anybody chooses to wear the name badge, wear the t-shirt, drive the company vehicle, whatever it may be. If you're making it known on any level that you represent this thing or this person or this company, then in that moment, that's all you represent, right? It doesn't matter your personal opinion or your personal belief system. If you're wearing the t-shirt or the company polo, then your actions, your words all tie back to and reflect on that company or that brand. So in that moment, there's a distinction of, looking back, I can think, okay, if this guy were a random dude driving by in his Honda yelling at me, I probably wouldn't have given much thought to it, right? Been a little worked up and frustrated and went about my day. But because in that moment he's representing a business, I decided and I felt it necessary that the business know and understand how they're being represented. That's really why I emailed them and reached out to them. Part of what's, moving us on in this conversation and what's brought it to the surface today is that fine line, I assume it's a fine line, between raising a point of something that's important and taking action to promote the quote-unquote cancel culture that is so prevalent in our world today, especially given social media. Although I put them on blast, quote-unquote, put the company on blast on social media, that was long after the opportunity they had to simply own the mistake and apologize for the behavior of this individual. So, we can talk about that and break it down, but I wanted to make that clear. I didn't immediately start assuming or accusing this entire company of being a joke. I called them directly. I emailed them directly and said, here's the situation. Let's talk through it. And it was their response to that email that caused me to go as far as putting them on blast on social media.
So what was their response?
A very shallow non-response, basically. I sent him an email through the website and explained the situation. It was, I don't know, probably a paragraph. It wasn't like I went on for a novel or whatever.
Yeah.
And I did ask them for a timely response, which they gave that afternoon. So 4 or 5 hours maybe. So that was great. But in their response, the manager had said, and I'm paraphrasing, but they said, Sean, thank you for your email. We got it. We called our associate and we talked about the incident in the parking lot and we reviewed our policies in order to avoid situations in the future.
But
Goodbye.
Yeah. Was there any recognition that that person or the situation was not right?
Not at all. There
Yeah.
was no sort of ownership. There was no apology. There was, oh my gosh, there was nothing but
Right.
okay, we talked about it, so thanks. And it was from there that I was like, WTF, not cool. That
Yeah.
any brand, big or small, is better than that. And as I learned, this brand is massive, like national. So in my head, I'm like, I know you've all made mistakes before, we all have. Just say you're sorry. And
Yeah.
in fact, my response to Chris, the manager, was, first sentence, I'm disappointed you did not offer an apology.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I was looking for.
So had the first line of the email said, Sean, I'm really sorry, how does that change the situation? I think that's a really important thing to recognize, right?
An apology recognizes that there is room for improvement. Now, I don't necessarily believe that an apology might be 100% ownership. I get it. Maybe they read the email and they're like, oh my God, this joker. Fine. Apologize anyway. Like, I would never know what their angle is. But the fact that they didn't apologize 100% reveals their angle, right? They either don't care about how they're represented, or perhaps they just don't believe me. Maybe they assume I'm lying.
Well, and, they said, oh, we'll make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. Neither of us in this conversation are very confident in that because they didn't even recognize that anything was wrong, right?
Yeah. Speaking about the future, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm nervous about the future because something tells me I'm going to run into this guy again. If I see him in this major shopping center that A, I frequent for the Starbucks on that side of the shopping center, and B, I work in the other side of the shop.
Yeah, right.
And they're a commercial landscape company. It wasn't like he was making a pit stop for Starbucks. Right. I think he works in the neighborhood, maybe even that shopping center, cutting trees or mowing the lawn or whatever. They're commercial landscape only. So now I'm nervous because A, I don't believe it was addressed, so I don't think that he'll approach somebody else in my situation with a different lens. But also, I'm pretty sure now he knows I'm a quote-unquote tattletale. And if he's already aggressive because he thinks I'm drunk, how much more aggressive is he going to be when he sees me again, knowing that I called his boss or a boss or whatever?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It makes me nervous. But also, I would definitely have your phone at the ready. And
100%. That even in my response, I'm like, I don't trust you guys to prevent any future similar incidents. I just don't think that's reality. And so part of me is hopeful that I do run into this brand again, maybe even this guy, and 100% my phone will be ready.
You say run into this brand again. Is there any indication? I think you said you looked through, you did a little research and whatever, looked around on these guys. Is there any indication that this may be more than just one incident?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So, when I started to post the entire story and break it down on my Instagram storyboard or whatever you call it, I had a lot of people reaching out, right? They were just, I think, as frustrated as I was. Granted, the guy's initial question, I think his concern was fair and legitimate. Mm-hmm. I would have appreciated a different approach, but I get it. I don't think there's any harm in asking the question. That's not why I reached out to the company. So, side note, a lot of folks, my friends, followers, whatever, started to leave comments, reach out to them. A couple of friends, they found other brands and other people involved. And it turns out they have a lot of really negative reviews online. Google Plus or reviews, whatever it is, Yelp, things of that nature. But what's entirely more frustrating than the incident itself, in my attempt to call attention to this shortcoming,
right,
and my friends and followers' attempts to call attention to this deficit of theirs, I was blocked, and a lot of my friends and followers were also blocked.
Oh my gosh.
In the midst. So not only did they fail to say, oops, we screwed up, but then they just started to hide it, right? Shove it under the rug.
Yeah, cover up.
So I'm convinced that the handful of reviews you can find online are just the ones that they can't delete. Because something tells me there are a million more. And like I said, this company is national, right? They operate a conglomerate of landscape companies, at least 6 that I can tell.
Wow. So you posted on Instagram and tagged them, and then a bunch of people commented. Is that kind of...
A lot of people like, okay, we see their frustration, and we agree there needs to be some apology. Again, I'll just make it clear. The guy's question, are you drunk? Although I didn't appreciate the approach, is fair. Whether it's concern for his safety or mine or somebody else's, doesn't matter, is a fair question. The aggression that he showed after not taking my no at face value is where we crossed the line. This company that he represents, I think, failed to take ownership of that. So anyway, they blocked me and all my friends.
You say his question is fair, but I think at a certain level, maybe it's not. Like, there's 100 different questions he could have asked, right? Like, hey, do you need some help? Do you need me to call you an Uber? Are you okay? Are you sure you're all right to drive right now? Because you look like you're drunk.
You're wasted, yeah.
But he jumps to that conclusion, right?
Yeah, I think about our episode we talked about with Deborah, right? Your interaction with the lady when you were sitting in your wheelchair under the tree. I just remember saying, sure, it's one thing to want a certain phrase or a certain approach, but part of me thinks it's unfair, right? To have my cake and eat it too. So, although I agree with you, he could have asked, hey, are you okay? Mm-hmm. Do you need a ride? Do you need a taxi? Whatever. Like, sure, he could have said something different and could have even used a more polite tone. But I'll give him credit for at least expressing the concern, right? It's one thing to see it and ignore it, and then get in a car wreck, and then you feel bad. So I don't know. I'm indifferent on that, I guess. I value and I want to respect his willingness to address it.
Yeah.
For whatever that's worth. I'm frustrated with his company's lack of similar willingness to address it and own it. When they respond with, quote unquote, now I'm reading it, we really appreciate your input as it is our help to prevent any future similar incidents. I'm not convinced that they are taking steps to help move in that direction.
Right. So what's
the company's name?
So
Landscape Companies. And this particular brand or associates.
Well, so Sean, actually what I was going to ask is what What is? So I understand that the ideal outcome would have been for them to just recognize, like simply recognize that there was something wrong. So what is the step from here? Where do you go from here?
Well, I certainly have made it clear online my opinion of this particular brand. I've reached out to the guy on LinkedIn that appears to be the vice president of this particular brand, and I feel like I've done everything I could to call attention to an opportunity. And although it's been a solid week, they have not responded. I don't expect them to at this point. The overall message and the reason why it comes up today is for anybody listening to recognize that there may be other things at play, and when there's a concern, something triggers inside of you, to simply ask questions and roll with your questioning with a sense of concern more than a sense of you're right and no matter what they say, they're going to be wrong. Because that was... I feel like that was the angle this guy was taking. It doesn't matter what I was going to say, probably. I'm convinced that he was convinced I was drunk, and there was no way to prove him wrong.
Yep. Right. And also, I think on top of that, you use the word opportunity. This was an opportunity for this company to do something. Like, it's a terrible situation, but they could do something good, and they could maybe win you over, right? Like, depending on how they react to the situation, it dictates how you're going to think of them as a brand.
Yeah,
right?
Great point. I don't know if I said this yet, but although they're a commercial landscape company, I have no need for a commercial landscape.
Right.
All I know of this brand and all the brands they own is this interaction with the guy and then the company's failure to apologize. So let's just say down the road, if by chance I have a need for commercial landscaping, I can tell you hands down who I will never consider. Just based on principle alone, until they apologize, I will never give them any credit for doing anything good or positive in our world, because I just don't believe they're capable of it. I could be wrong.
No, I that's how things work, right? Like, that's what reputation is.
Yeah, totally.
Is every single interaction with every person building up to your reputation. And it sounds like in the case of this company, it's not that great.
So I guess what I'm curious about too is I'm just asking questions now of listeners, but I'm convinced some people are like, dude, get over it and move on. But I'm also convinced, obviously, given the support I was shown on social, a lot of people understand where I'm coming from, and they agree this company has an opportunity. So I'm curious where that line is between calling attention to something that I believe needs to be fixed versus blasting a brand or a company or even an individual for a mistake. That cancel culture that I alluded to earlier, where's the line and what's the difference, I guess?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure. I haven't. Do you have thoughts on that question?
It appears the big difference, especially in this story as it relates to me, is for the most part, cancel culture comes up not at a personal discord, but of some disapproval of a company or brands or an individual's actions, words, decisions, things of that nature. Not necessarily a personal experience. Not that it matters, but there was that piece of it. But then also, the cancel culture tends to blast an individual to a point of no return, failing to give the individual an opportunity to rectify the problem or the mistake.
Right.
And at least in my particular case, although 5 years ago I would have just put them on blast, I called them and I emailed them directly long before I took it to social media. So I feel like I did it right. I gave them an opportunity to fix it. They didn't. So I made sure people knew what kind of brands they're dealing with when it comes to these folks.
Yeah. I think, first of all, in the media, in this cancel culture stuff, I don't think we ever hear the entire story.
Sure.
But it seems like there's a lot of jumping to conclusions. And you're right, it doesn't seem like there's that opportunity for a little like back and forth, right? And in your case, you made sure to provide that opportunity to make it right before going to the airwaves with it.
And apparently that rubbed him wrong. I don't know. Like, I have on my social media, my followers and friends, I had other small business owners reach out to the VP and say, what the heck? This non-apology isn't good enough. And lots of different comments and messages on Instagram and directly to the vice president. And at one point, the VP responded and said, I would like to learn more. I want to help any way I can. And I haven't heard from him since. And I know that my messages and all the little comments online and whatnot have made it pretty clear what the issue was.
Yeah.
And he hasn't stepped up any further. We all make mistakes, right? Whether you're an individual or a company or a brand or you wear a badge, like whatever the case, everybody makes mistakes. What makes life better is when we are willing to recognize those mistakes and own them for the sake of not repeating them in a very shallow, hollow way. The company said, their hope is to prevent any future incidents. I feel like they have failed to recognize the opportunity and apologize.
Yep.
And ultimately, a simple, hey, we're sorry about that, is all it would take to make this right. When you're dealing with a business or a company, I feel like they can be bigger than an individual's ego.
So, Sean, I feel like the bottom line from this story, and I'm sure we may hear more about it in the future if anything happens, but I feel like the bottom line is everyone makes mistakes, and it's just a matter of how we respond to them. I mean,
and like I said, I've been there. I've chewed somebody's head off because of their approach, and I would label those as mistakes. There's been room for me to be a little more gracious and to be a little more empathetic, and I think ultimately that's just what our world needs more of, right? A little more empathy, a little more education, and understanding that just because somebody looks homeless doesn't mean they are homeless. Just because somebody looks drunk doesn't mean they are drunk. And
yeah, little grace goes a long ways.
For sure.
Cool. Well, Sean, not cool. What am I talking about? No. But I appreciate the conversation. We need to move on, though, to our one things. So what is your one thing for this week?
I'm going to get my vote done. I've been doing mail-in ballot for years, and I'm going to get that filled out and mailed this week.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah.
And I hope you and our listeners do the same. Just
absolutely.
Vote.
I got mine done last week, and
Nice.
I hope everyone's doing that too. For me this week, as you know, I just moved into my new place. There's a lot of stuff still in boxes, so my one thing is very similar to yours last week, is to clean my place and just get everything out of the boxes and into the cupboards and in their
Nice.
spots. So.
All right. Cool. Well, how about thank you notes? As we started doing in season 3, we believe it's important to express some gratitude, and in a sense that helps keep us grounded. And yes, this is Sean grounded. So my thank you note this week goes out to our or my research team at UCLA. As a lot of rare disease folks know, we do participate in clinical trials and, at the very least, ongoing natural history studies of our condition. So recently I was in UCLA for a clinical trial, and while I was there, I just threw it out there, like asked, hey, I'm in that annual window for natural history. Can we update some of those records too? Thinking it was just a matter of paperwork, right? I was dead wrong. What I asked was a 2-hour burden. Like, it required a lot more work and a lot more preparation. And this team at UCLA, they're so incredibly gracious and nice and helpful that they didn't even hesitate. They were like, yeah, it's a good idea. Oh, yeah, let's take care of that while you're here.
Yeah.
And what was supposed to be a 45-minute appointment turned into a 3-hour expedition, and they never made me feel like a burden anywhere.
Oh, that's great.
In the way.
Beautiful. Got it done. Well, my thank you note goes out to Patty Friedman. You have met Patty before. She helped me move this week. I had just a few things. You know, when you get to that point in moving where all the big stuff is gone, and you have like just piles of stuff, and you're just like, just put it in bags and
Throw it
take
all
it.
away. Just throw it away.
So there was just a few random things that I couldn't move myself, and she helped out, and I really, really appreciate Patty. Always takes care of me, and in this case, she continued just taking care of me like one of her own. So appreciate it. Thank you, Patty.
Did you throw stuff away? Speaking of, when you move, that's usually a great opportunity to declutter.
Yeah.
So how much would you say? A couple trash bags, so a few things here and there. Do you feel like you cleaned house a lot or little?
I got rid of 4 grocery bags full of clothes, like paper bags.
Okay.
And a lot of stuff in the kitchen that just I've had forever, and so yeah, I think I did an okay job.
Have you ever come across things and you ask yourself, why in the world have I kept this for this long?
Oh yeah, I know. There's this hard-boiled egg maker that we unpacked today, and I was like, why did I bring this? Why did I move this from place to place like 3 times, and it's still here?
So yeah, where is it right now then? Did you throw it in the garbage? Why haven't you thrown it in the garbage? Throw it away, dude. Yeah. I feel like I work with natural hoarders, and it drives me nuts. So typically once a week, I'll be digging through a corner or a drawer, and I just throw things away without even asking. If I've been in that team for 4 years, if we haven't used it since I've been there, it's trash. We're getting rid of it. So anyway.
Sean, where do you think that comes from? Like, is it passed down from one of your parents, or is it just Sean?
I think it's just a level of anal retentiveness for me. Like, and I'll be honest with you, I found something last night that I asked, why do I have it? And I threw it away. So I know that I have things that somebody else will like, why do you have that? So I know there's room to get better there. But yeah, I don't know. There's something natural inside me that just prefers not to hang on to stuff I'm never going to use again. Or even things you might use once every 10 years, buy it once every 10 years if that's the case.
Anyway. All right, Sean, well, thanks for your story. Thanks for sharing your life with us. It enables all of us, I think, to be better people. Speaking of better people, we have an amazing guest next week, Chris Dufton. His book is I'm Fine, Thanks, and he shares his story as it relates to his wife who passed of FA several years ago, and just coming back from that and figuring out how to rebuild his life. And it's a really heartfelt, incredible conversation. I hope everybody enjoys it. We will see you next week. In the meantime,
keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Special thanks to our friend and audio producer, Jake Tompkins.